BMI is a hot topic within the general population. Now, I think you and I both know it's pretty irrelevant in terms of you performing well and in general physical performance at large. But trust me when I say that almost nobody actually understands what BMI means. Ilona Maher, USA rugby star and Olympian, got a really shitty comment about a 30% BMI from someone on TikTok, and she had a lot to say about it.
I think you were trying to roast me, but this is actually a fact. I do have a BMI of 30. Well, 29.3 to be more exact. I've been considered overweight my whole life. In middle school, elementary school, high school, I was always considered overweight. I remember vividly one time in high school, I did turn in a physical to the office, and right at the bottom of the page, it said overweight. And I was so embarrassed to turn that in and to have that written there. So my whole life I've been this way. I chatted with my dietitian because I go off of, facts and not just what pops up here, like you do. And we talked about BMI, and we talked about how it really isn't helpful for athletes. BMI doesn't tell you much. It just tells you what your height and weight and what that equals. I've said it before, I'm 5'10", 200 pounds. And I have about, and this is an estimate, but about 170 pounds of lean mass on me. Do that math in your head, you probably can't. That's pretty crazy, right? And that BMI doesn't really tell you what I can do. It doesn't tell you what I do in the field, how fit I am. It's just a couple numbers put together. It doesn't tell you how much muscle I have or anything like that. So, yeah, I do have a BMI of 30. I am considered overweight. But alas, I'm going to the Olympics, and you're not.
So a bit cocky, a bit female strong character. I don't love that taste in people when they try to clap back, as the media says, when someone says something rude. But there's a reason I wanted to talk about this today. And there's actually a multifactorial reason I want to talk about this today. There's a lot to it. The first things first, this woman by no means is a normal woman. She is mass, and I mean mass in every sense of the way. When her doctor said that she was, 180 pounds something lean mass, she certainly wasn't lying. She has a pretty androgynous face for a female. It's kind of interesting. Something you'd kind of think of as a girl using Anavar. To be honest, a girl using some sort of performance-enhancing compounds. The girl's jacked, no doubt, right? Like, I'm gonna give it to her. She's jacked, she's muscular, she's got a good physique. Definitely, a little bit of an interesting face in terms of, again, female androgynism, having a big jaw, having that really pronounced mandible. What I'm getting at here is there's a high probability that she might not be natural. There's a very high probability of that. I'm not here to do a natty or not, but part of what I had to say in a rebuttal to her 30% BMI doesn't mean much is, yeah, it doesn't mean much when you're taking anabolic androgenic steroids or other compounds such as peptides and other things that, aren't necessarily allowed in our sport. But let's fast forward past this a little bit. BMI doesn't matter in terms of having muscle or not having muscle. It's a very inaccurate measurement. It's just telling you your total body mass. So that body mass can be comprised completely of muscle tissue. My entire military career, every time I weighed in, I was considered overweight, and I'd have to go get tape measured so they could actually calculate my body fat through manual calculations, which were wildly inaccurate. But regardless, I had to do that every single year. This doesn't mean I wasn't fit, but it also doesn't mean that I was the best in physical testing. See, in my entire squadron and even troop, I was one of the top performers in physical tests, but I was nowhere near the top performer because those guys were 145 to 160 pounds. They were skinny, lengthy, and could run 1,000,000 miles an hour without ever having to stop. I, on the other hand, had a lot more tissue I needed to oxygenate, and it slowed me down tremendously. So this is where she is going to be generally wrong when it comes to having a higher versus lower BMI, and that higher BMI affecting your performance. There is a huge correlation between higher BMIs and performance. You are much slower with a higher BMI, lean or not. And in terms of performance ability, if you're not a strength-based athlete who basically stays immobile for the most of their sport, being a higher BMI usually isn't going to lend itself to any favor of yours. You are less capable of holding yourself to massive cardiovascular feats in which other people could very easily do if they had 40 pounds less on their frame. You just simply require more oxygen than the person to your left or right. If you're looking for the fastest and most highest explosive, wild performing athlete out there, their body mass index is low. I mean, again, you can be shredded and have a higher body mass index because you generally have more muscle. And because you have more muscle, that body mass index is going to still slow you down tremendously. Personal story time, personal story time, personal story time. When I was fighting in Muay Thai in Thailand, which was the most legit experience I've ever had in my life, and one that I'm still very proud about, and yes, I'll probably bring up in every single video. And by the way, I did find a Muay Thai gym in Calgary, but if you guys have any other suggestions near the Calgary area in Canada, God help me get me out of here, please. Someone get me out of Canada. Every pro fighter in Thailand was about 130 pounds. They're called flyweights. They're literally under the weights of the lightest weight championship. But they were always the hardest hitters. There was no doubt that if you got kicked by one of them, you were out. They were the fastest. You could never lay a exact punch on them or a kick because they would be moving before you already had landed it. And me sitting at 188 centimeters, and for those of you who don't follow communism and like to count in freedom units, that's 6'2" and around 240 pounds, I couldn't hit these guys for shit. In fact, I got my ass whooped more than I can count. I would leave there every single time with bruises, cuts, and just an awful amalgam of just beaten, swollen body parts, which I posted many videos on Instagram if you want to check that out. Point is in saying this is that if I had a lower body mass index, I might be able to maneuver a little bit more fastly, and then in doing that maneuvering, get a better result in an actual fight. Now, again, I want to state the purpose behind this video. It's not to bash her and what she said, because this is an easy mistake that a lot of people can make. It's in fact just to use this as a leverage to say having a high body mass index doesn't mean that you can just glorify having a high body mass index. See, what happened was a lot of people took this post and then ran away with it saying that having fat mass is okay because high body mass index obviously equates to having a lot of fat. So it's healthy to have fat. She's going to the Olympics and she's fat. That's not the case. She's extremely she's fucking masculine, let's be honest. She has a ton of muscle compared to what a normal general population female would have. She is not necessarily fat, she just has a lot of fat-free mass. Most people watching this video are going to have a lot of fat mass, and I hate the justification that having a high BMI is still appropriate in terms of someone who has disproportionate amounts of fat mass. In all sports, no matter what they are, having a high BMI is generally not going to aid you unless, again, it is a strength sport. And having a high BMI is not correlative to having a big muscular physique. Oftentimes, it's just someone who's fat as fuck. And I see you guys out there with the big beer bellies, purple skin, bald heads walking around in the gym. You think you're jacked because you have big arms and a round chest, but your fucking belly's still hanging out over your titties and you don't look good. You're fat, okay? Lay off the fucking Anadrol tablets and start drinking water instead of booze, and maybe you'll be someone that can impress another person. But for the most part, you guys are in this fucking group too. Again, like I said, I also have a suspicion that she's not natural. It would explain having her disproportionately high BMI and that 170 pounds of muscle tissue on her body. Allegedly. All this is allegedly. Again, just look at her jawline. Like, something about this picture, something about this TikTok just is unsettling. It's just very unsettling. I don't know, man. Like, that sharp jaw touching me like over a hug or something, man. I don't know if I could do it. I don't know. We've spoken before a lot about women's facial changes and general features like mandibles expanding because of androgens. In fact, it's a prerequisite to have those masculine features defined in the first place. We've covered many studies talking about the prenatal sex hormone release and how that can alter female and male facial structures as well as just other bits of anatomy. Of course, you already probably know what those are. But again, we've also seen in other studies that there is a definite change in facial structure with the use of androgens, and specifically changes in even like digits, like your fingers changing in size relative to how much androgens you're chasing. Now, I'm not saying she's directly taking androgens. She might not be. She might be. she allegedly she might not be as well. It just could be a fact that she has a very disproportionate amount of testosterone endogenously that she produces compared to natural or other females, not just natural females, but other females. It does raise an eyebrow for me, but it's not something that is necessarily conducive of abuse of steroids. But again, my main point with this is just ultimately that she is an Olympic athlete and should understand that a lot of idiots follow her and literally kiss the ground that she walks on. Them leveraging this as a way to say, guys, look at me, I'm not fat, I can still go to the Olympics, when really they're extremely fat, just kills me. I can hear all the Sharons crying it out loud already. So here's the TLDR. Having a higher body mass index does not aid you in any capacity unless you're a bodybuilder or a strength-based athlete. In most people, having a higher body mass index, even if it's lean tissue, will absolutely make your endurance much worse by like a significantly large margin. I mean, just try even swimming with a higher body mass index, even if you're bone shredded, which will make it harder because fat is buoyant, and if you're lean and also have a copious amount of lean mass, you're sinking straight to the motherfucking bottom. And 3, most people who have a relatively high BMI per normal general population and still have a really lean and muscular physique generally are taking performance enhancing drugs. Sorry. Anyways, that's about it. If you want to join a Discord group that has a bunch of cool stuff for you and you are a bodybuilder taking substances, it'd be a good place for you to stop by. It's also a good place to socialize with friends and other bodybuilders just like yours truly. Click the link down below. We'll get you set up.